Hi, friend. Niclas here. Welcome to another episode. On the show today, we have music producer and engineer Pete Hutchings. He most recently worked on Royal Blood's latest album, Typhoons, which, if you haven't heard the album, go check it out. It's awesome. It sounds killer. And Pete has also worked on albums such as Nothing But Thieves' self-titled album, which is another killer record. He worked on Florence and The Machines, Ceremonials and Adele, Skyfall, and many other killer records, which you should also go check out. They're all great. And it was a real pleasure talking to Pete, and I hope you will like our conversation as well. But before we get into the interview with Pete, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, whether that's on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically wherever you are listening and watching this show. Your support really helps, and we're growing slowly but steadily, and that's all thanks to you. So I really appreciate your support. And also, before we get into the interview, please check out the Other Tribe email list. If you want exclusive access to interviews before the public, please subscribe to the email list. It's free, of course. Just enter your name and email address and you're on the Other Tribe email list. But that's it. Let's get into the interview with Pete Hutchings. So please enjoy.
All that's kind of hitting the media is the allegations of the Italians doing drugs on their table.
But I saw a clip of that this morning. I didn't think it looked like he was doing drugs. Or did you think so?
No, I'd be shocked
No.
if it was. I'd be totally shocked for that. It's a bit weird. I mean, everyone's like looking at the camera and he's like bending down towards the table. No, I think he was just looking at something, I don't know, maybe close on his phone, something's on his lap. Who knows? Maybe he was just really tired. He just wanted to rest his head. That's probably
Yeah. I mean, it must have been the shortest cocaine line in the world if he was doing cocaine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, because I'm Swedish, and I thought actually that the Sweden's song should have done much better than it did. I thought that was a bit weird. Also,
I don't think I remembered Sweden's song. Which act were they? Remind me of the act, and I might remember the song.
so his name was, I don't even know how to say it in English, but I guess you pronounce it like Tusse. He was a black guy, but he looked like a girl. I thought in a red sort of dress, like not a dress like a dress, but like some sort of a attire, red attire.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I thought it was pretty good though, but again, it didn't get many points, unfortunately. But yeah, that's Eurovision, I guess. And also they changed the voting system, which I think is also weird. I mean, this is not a Eurovision podcast, but because it just happened, I thought it was super weird. Like they give all this, they have a jury, which I find super weird. It's like, why is there a jury? You know, like who cares what the jury says? It's all about the people's vote in this case, but they have some jury now, which I find weird.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does this do you put the how does this work? Is this you upload the videos, right? These
Yeah, exactly. Video goes to YouTube, audio goes to what's it called? Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yeah.
Some other places I'm not too sure of, but yeah, those are the two main ones.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
I watched some of the videos, like chatting to Christian and
Paul, you work with those guys, right?
and chatting to like Catherine Marks as well. That was interesting.
Yeah.
She's done some great things, so that was cool to hear her chat.
Yeah, have you worked with the Christian and those guys too?
I did a bit of stuff with Spitfire Audio a while ago. Well, if I say a while ago, like probably like 4 or 5 years ago, just helping out at Spitfire, sort of editing samples.
Nice. Was it fun?
No.
No. I can imagine. Tedious.
I mean, it's great for a while. It's super interesting and it's a phenomenal business. I'm an enormous fan how they operate and how Christian and Paul are and how they treat everyone. And a good friend of mine has worked at that company since day one, and he ended up getting me involved just for a little bit. And it was great at the time, but there's only so much I could do of it. It does get very, very, very tedious. And also you need phenomenal patience and attention to detail. If you're listening to your 1,000th piano sample and there's listen to the full 20 seconds of a low E note or something, and check there's no cough or squeak or breath or murmur or click or then that all has to be edited out. And it's a lot of work.
I can imagine, man. I can imagine. But so now obviously you worked with Royal Blood, which is a pretty badass record, man. Like the whole, like from recording all to mastering, you can tell it's a very well. Oh, and also obviously the songwriting. I shouldn't forget that, but you can tell it's a very well made album, which it was very nice to hear.
Cool. Glad
so did you work also with like we said before, like the team at I just blanked on the name, Church Studios, like Paul and Riley and those guys, or?
I wasn't involved in that. So they did some recording there about. Well, actually, no. I was involved in their first single, "Trouble's Coming." I was involved in recording the vocals. So that was how I first got involved with Royal Blood, was recording the vocals for that song here in this room. And they recorded that song with Paul at church just up the road. And it was about, I don't know, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that session or something, that I got a call to do vocals for that song, which was great. But I was never like directly involved in working with Paul or Riley on the recording of that song. Right. And then they did one more song up there as well, I think. Was it? Did they do Who Needs? No, I can't remember now.
Sure. Yeah, there was a few. I think I just checked them.
It was just two. It wasn't Hold On. Who Needs Friends? Something. Trying to remember. Trying to just crack my brains.
It was definitely the first one.
Yeah, I think it was either Who Needs Friends or Million One. I'm pretty sure it's Who Needs Friends. And then I was involved in recording Oblivion and Mad Visions, mixed those songs, and then I mixed King and Space, which were on the deluxe as well.
Right.
Which was great. Yeah, good fun.
Yeah, no, great work, man. It sounds killer. But so how does that whole thing work? Because, excuse me, I never been a part of something like that where maybe, let's say, when you get a call to do vocals, like how does that whole, is it weird to just have someone come in and do vocals so you don't really know the song really, or what's that like?
It's not really weird after you've sort of seen the process happen sort of so many times in different roles. So I started out as on reception at a studio, and then went to like T-boy, and then assistant, and then Pro Tools engineer, and then engineer, and then now sort of work in engineering and mixing and production roles now, kind of just circulating depending on the project and depending on what's needed. And when you work with someone like Royal Blood, they produce their records, so they have full control and understanding. They've made enough music in the past to know what they want. They know their sound. They are their sound. As long as they're true to themselves, then they'll get what they want. So working with Mike, the singer, recording his vocal is relatively straightforward because he knows what he wants out of it. As long as you kind of do all the technical things well, then you should get a good result, and just pay attention to the detail that he's looking for, and make sure that you know where all that detail is in your in your playlists or whatever, so that you know when to edit together. You get the bits that he's wanting. But yeah, it's I guess as well, it's heavily dependent on personality. And there's not one personality that's right for every session. So, it's the right person for the right job. That's it as well. The reason I got a call was because I was working with another band who are on the same label as Royal Blood, and the head of the label came to that session, and quite a few times we were doing like a 2-month recording sort of stint. So they kept on coming down to listen to what we had been doing. Got to know me, saw me work, saw how I behaved in the studio and operated with the band, and my natural kind of sort of style, in the studio, personality and stuff. And then he thought that would be a good match with Mike, just in terms of sometimes. But this is the thing: sometimes you need a singer wants to work with someone who's telling them what to do and knows exactly sort of how to make it, give them confidence and sort of do all of that sort of thing. And sometimes I'll be that guy, but more often not, I'm not, because I don't believe in that. I found that quite false. It should always come from within the artist. But not all artists can do that. It's, there's so many variables when it comes to it. Fundamentally, when it was, that session in particular, working with Mike, it was the Phil Christie at Warner Records who suggested it, because he saw the two personalities potentially being able to get on, and then I was able to kind of also do the technical things as well that were needed to get the results. So that's probably the kind of the reason why it worked. Looking back on it, because you spend so much time with an artist, it's quite intense. If your person, and it's not like I use the word personalities. It's not, it's just like, why are some people your friends and other people aren't? It's just like your natural flow, your natural conversational topics, your natural, sort of, just chit chat.
Totally. But so, I mean, you mentioned like, working with singers, sometimes you have to maybe push them or give suggestions and stuff. But I think that's cool with like bands like Royal Blood, like, because they are, I don't want to say like real artists, that's a bit lame to say, but like, they're that kind of artist, man, I should say, who are a band, who have their sound. I mean, it must be nice to work with those sort of artists too, who have the sound, know what they want, right?
Yeah, definitely. It gives it makes decision making very, very easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because do they like it? If they do, that's all that matters. That's and if there's a seed of doubt, then it's it's not right yet.
Yeah.
So find something that you like, and just that's kind of my role, just to help them find that and give them the space to find that.
Yeah, exactly. But so you said you started out as a T-boy and worked your way up. So which studio did you start working at? Was it Metallica or something? I think I saw something online about
No,
that.
I did work for Metallica for a bit, but before then, first job was at Eden Studios, which is a studio that's no longer around. It was in Chiswick in southwest London. It was open for 40 years, and then
Wow.
I worked there for the last 9 months that it was around, because the original founders of the studio, were in their 60s by that point. They wanted to sell it, they wanted to retire, and no one wanted to buy it. So, no one wanted to buy it and keep it as a studio.
Right.
Instead, a property developer bought it, knocked it down, and built loads of flats.
Always. Yeah.
So, which is a shame, because if you look, like, Eden Studios had some enormous names and records made. I mean, even in the 9 months that I was there, Kasabian did an album, Katie Tunstall did an album, one of I think the first Arctic Monkeys record had just been mixed there, or like it'd been mixed there like maybe a year before I was there. Like that you know, that's the sort of music that was being made in that studio. It was big names, big records. Like everyone's been in, you know, it's one of those, you know, if you read the list, it's yeah, it's anyone who was a musician in the last between 1965 and 2005 or whatever the correct maths is for how long the studio was open. It was yeah, big names. So yeah, that was where I started, and then
Right.
and then after that I then got offered a job at My Loco, mainly operating one of their SSL rooms because Eden had 2 SSL consoles, and at that time all of My Loco studios, apart from 2, were like non-SSL. They were Neve or something else.
Right.
Room predominantly Neve.
Right.
So most of the people who worked there didn't know SSL consoles. Specifically the computer. The computer was the bit that was the tricky bit. All consoles are the same in their idea, but at that time it was important to know the computer system software so that you knew how to save sessions, recall mixes, and you know, and just make sure that if someone wanted to use the automation, you knew how to do it. So that was why I went to a studio called Sofa Sound, which was Hugh Padgham's studio in Acton, and he had a beautiful G series there, which so I worked there for about a year, I think, roughly.
Nice.
Maybe a bit longer.
But so was that before? Because I was involved with Miloko for a brief moment, and I hated it because I was like we talked about Riley and those guys before, because I sort of knew Riley from a friend, and
Oh, no.
he was like, "Oh yeah, you can come here. We have to go through Miloko," and it was like it was quite a bullshit. Like, because I had to be like at Miloko's office. I forgot where it is, like close
Yeah,
to London
Bermondsey.
Bridge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
and I had to be there for like 2 weeks doing nothing in the kitchen,
yeah,
just so I can be at Church Studios for 2 weeks.
yeah.
And it was a bit weird.
The first like yeah, 2, 3, 4 weeks. My job was to swap out all the tea towels around all the studios in London.
Right.
I'd have 2 massive like laundry bags. One would be for clean and one would be for dirties. And I'd get on the bus and go. I'd have my route all around London. I'd get on bus and on tubes, go to the studios and take all the old tea towels, deliver new ones, and then I'd do that once a week for and that was a pretty painful day. And then the rest was, you know, like any manner of random non-audio related things, like photoshopping some photo that got put in a magazine with text over it that was in My Loco that they wanted to use for one of their own website without the text on or something, and you know, all sorts of weird shit.
Yeah,
Before
definitely.
I got to sort of step in and be responsible for a session or anything. Yeah, it's just.
So you did that, but how did you? So did you have to do that to be in the studio too? Was that like the deal, or?
Say that again.
So you had to do that like once a week, and then be in the studio the rest of the week, or
I had to do that before I say had to. I mean, it was my role in the studio wasn't completely confirmed. I can't remember why, but there was definitely a bit of limbo between me like leaving Eden Studios and Sofa Sound being operational through My Loco, because I think it was so new. I don't know if it was, you know, they still had, I don't know if it was sort of, they weren't taking it over for another couple of months, and in the meantime I did that. I can't remember. It's about 13, 14 years ago when that happened. So, but I definitely remember just going to Bermondsey every day and doing all of that stuff, and then I ended up at Sofa Sound for a while. So
That's good. You made it out at least.
yeah,
But
exactly.
so, I mean, so talking about the early start, like, why did you want to work in a recording studio? Were you in a band and stuff before, or was it always your dream to be an engineer?
Um, always, yeah, like um, I mean, I played in bands like all throughout school and all that sort of stuff. That was all fun.
What sort of bands?
Oh, just like bad rock bands. And I was just wanted to like record that and try and make it sound as good as possible. Um, and and didn't understand why putting like a microphone in front of a snare drum into a 4-track tape machine that I got off eBay didn't sound like a record. I was like, why doesn't that then sort of made me think, well, yeah, what are the steps to making that sound like my favorite records?
Hmm.
Then became a bit obsessed with predominantly Bob Rock. He was
Oh,
the
cool.
he was the first guy that, I mean, he's like that name's just, that's the number one producer idol for me because of the records that he's worked on. Um, the Black Album being the biggest
Hmm.
influence in production for me.
Hmm.
Um, and that really got me into it. And then I became obsessed with. Well, it wasn't until I sort of pieced together. My dad's a big music lover, and um, you know plays just any form of rock music from most of the decades, and so there was always CDs at home, that I could play, and I couldn't stop listening to Bon Jovi records, and then realized that Bob Rock engineered a lot of those Bon Jovi records, and it's like, oh right, so this is interesting. This is like
Hmm.
a person who you know transcends these different kind of genres within a genre. If we're sort of grouping guitar music together, I suppose. But yeah, I just, and then those sounds like, Bon Jovi records, geez, man, they're just enormous. Like I still don't know
Hmm.
how if I was given those tools, ah, it'd be absolutely terrifying. I guess they had like a year to make those records, I suppose, but um, yeah, geez, they're just
That's cool.
insane. The snare
So,
sound stuff are just enormous. So that was what captured my ears more than anything, I suppose. Was
right.
like with those sorts of records, and that's what I then wanted to try and recreate.
Hmm.
Fundamentally, just wanted to make yeah, just run down those roads for a bit.
Yeah. So, what was it about Black Album that caught your attention? Was it the drum sound mainly, or the whole production?
The whole thing, and then I watched the Classic Albums documentary about it, and it just captured my imagination even more. Like just them talking about production, talking about how it's so simple looking back at it, but when you know
Hmm.
nothing about sort of the magic, it's totally fascinating as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, however I was when I watched that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um and yeah, even just like the idea of having a left guitar, right guitar, and the thickener, as they call it, on the record, on that record, and hearing that in effect as well, like in um, what's it in Through the Never,
Right,
in the breakdown,
right, right,
those
right.
three guitars come in, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, it's just magic the way that the
It's
left
cool,
comes
yeah.
in, the center comes in, and the right comes in, and that, and I heard it as a on the bus on the way to school, and was just like, oh, that's so cool, like. It's just, maybe it's gimmicky or whatever, but I loved it, and
Yeah, yeah, totally,
it,
man.
it, it gave, and I just thought, oh, I want to do stuff like that. I want to, because I played guitar my whole life. That was my thing, and so I guess playing guitar, playing riffs, playing solos, was always a thing when I was a kid, and then drum sounds was obviously phenomenally exciting. And then I started hearing drum sounds. Then I started getting introduced to Nirvana records and Pearl Jam records, and the phenomenally produced, like gorgeous like open snares and just beautiful kind of roomy. A lot of those records, that's what they were. Like the grunge records, especially from late 80s and early 90s, were very like reverb heavy and stuff, and I loved all that. So yeah, it was trying to then recreate that, buying cheap reverb machines off eBay and putting MIDI drums off my Casio keyboard into reverb machines and just being like, this is amazing. It's just it was fun. It was just having toys, and it was just really fun to experiment with all that stuff. So
Yeah, man. I mean, that's awesome. Did you ever see the year and a half in Metallica? I think that's what it's called. It's like I think it's like a 2 hour documentary even about the Black Album and the following tour. Did you ever see that?
um
I think that's even more deeper than the classic album.
no, I don't think I have seen that. I've seen
You need to check that out. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of the extended footage on YouTube,
Right.
of like, any Black Album studio footage I've checked out, and there's a lot that's not included in that classic albums. So yeah, but I haven't watched that hour and a half one.
No, you should definitely should if you're into Metallica. I remember seeing that over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's all about Black Album and the tour that followed. It's awesome.
Yeah. Pretty insane.
And I was actually fortunate to interview Bob Rock like 2 years ago, because I'm like you. I was also heavily into Metallica growing up, and all those bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean, man. It's awesome when you grow up and you're just discovering all these things, right? Because it's all new and it's all like, there's some guitar pan. It's like, oh, that's magic,
Yeah, no, absolutely. The simple things that just make it so enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. What's your thoughts on what is it, Saint Anger, the album? Did you like that or not?
I think that's one of my favorite Metallica albums.
Yeah. Same here, man.
I think it does exactly what a heavy metal record should do, and that's make people angry. It's so offensive. It's so offensive and heavy for that reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that snare is just absolute. I mean, and people say, this winds me up because people say, oh, the snare on Saint Anger, and I'm like, every song is a different snare sound. It's so like it varies throughout the whole record. There's even a couple of times when there are snare, like the snare is on, and it was and I love that kind of the energy that's from it, and it's so. Every time I hear that record, I'm taken straight back to that summer when it was released. I don't. When was that be? What two? I don't even know. I'm guessing now. 2000. I'm going to guess.
Maybe.
Well, I was going to say 5.
But, okay. Yeah, I don't know. It might be.
But maybe it was earlier. And oh man, it's just great. It's just great. And there's some really cool things like there's such a different kick sound on the downbeats and everything else. It's like almost like it's like the kick sort of. It's really soft and almost like a room mic sort of kick drum, and then they bring in the close mic, and it's like sort of got the top end and bottom end that you associate with modern day heavy metal drums, and I just thought that was so sort of clever and raw. It sort of made it more of like a garage recording. The guitar sounds are like they're just so evil because they're so low. It's the lowest Metallica, I think I'm almost certain it's the lowest Metallica tuning of all the albums, and some of those riffs being played like that in like drop C sharp or whatever, or drop C, even drop B, I think it goes down to at some points, with frantic and things like it's just that the just hear everything. The strings are so loose and it's just it's really cool. So yeah, I listen to that now and I don't have to say it like. I don't enjoy it as much as I did when it came out, but when it came out, I thought it was just, incredible because it was like nothing I'd ever heard before. And that was what the Black Album did for my ears. Right. It was like nothing I ever heard before, so I listened to it. And the same with Saint Anger. It was just, so unique. And to make a record that people still talk about as well. I mean, people will get hard pressed to do that, even if it's a terrible album. There's something about Saint Anger that I believe people, love, but I don't know. yeah, it gets mixed reviews.
No, I totally agree, man. I mean, just talking about the drums, I mean, also the drumming itself, like it's very, very creative drum grooves on the album, which I think are kick ass.
Yeah, there was this active battle between, like, if you've seen the film,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the battle between James and Lars only ever wanting to do something that wasn't conventional, and
Hmm.
James just being like, "Can we just do a normal beat?" And Lars
Yeah.
like, what about, he's just pushing and pushing and pushing for something that's not snare on the 2 and 4, just anything but that. And yeah,
Hmm.
there's some good moments for it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
it's pretty,
But do you
yeah.
think that goes back to what we spoke about before, like working with bands like that, like say, similar to Royal Blood, where you're working with people who have an idea and they're committing to it and they actually create something that is that idea fully, expressed. I mean, that's hard to do, like coming in and, that maybe take a year and a half, but still having that mindset, this is what we're sticking to, and actually seeing that through. That's hard to do.
it it's only hard to do when you complicate it with trying to uh, appeal to anyone else that's not you.
Right.
When you just do what you want to do, then it's easy. But that's the hardest part, is because the older, the older you get, just through simple living, the more voices you hear in just in life, and the more information you have about something, the more then you question something. Whether like when you're a kid, it's easy to know, I don't know, like, yeah, what car to buy or something, because you've got limited information. When you're an adult, it's a lot harder because you question a lot. You
Yeah.
have a lot more information. You understand the pitfalls a lot more. So you need to so it becomes a more complicated thing. Unfortunately, it happens in yeah, music. When you're creating something, you release an album, you release 2 albums, it's impossible not to hear about comments or people's feedback, or their likes and dislikes, and it takes a sort of strong, I was going to say a strong sort of character, but I don't really mean that. It's You have to have a lot of awareness about yourself, to be able to then sort of let that sink in, but then also not be bothered by it and just stick to what you want to do. Um, and if you're lucky enough to be, really good at what you do, then that's what you should do. And the biggest bands in the world, I believe that um, their what is it? Their success is simply a byproduct of them being true to themselves. And there's,
Mm.
when you try and change that, you won't have a long sort of sustained happy career,
Mm.
because you'll always be doubting your instinct. If you get lucky on the first record and it wasn't truly you, then how are you going to make a second one easily? You might be able to, but yeah. So when it comes to, big bands and artists who are making 3 or 4 or 5 albums, is simply because, yeah, they're just doing what they want to do.
Mm.
And a lot of the time, fans don't like it as well. Like, they'll do something that's like, off the, like, sort of slightly off road, or look at Queen's record, and of styles and genres that they explored. They would simply just doing what they want to do, and they end up with, the catalogue of songs that they do have after after making them for 30 odd years, or however long they were making music for. So I don't know, probably less, wasn't it? Don't
Mm.
know. So yeah, that's, I don't know, I ended up there, but yeah.
No, no, that's super interesting because there was I had a couple of interviews a few weeks ago, and what you just mentioned, like being true to yourself, that kept coming up on each conversation I had, like with artists and producers, and you mentioned it now, and I think I keep hearing it, but I think it's so true for. It doesn't really matter what you are, if you're an artist, a producer, engineer, the ability to be true to yourself, and yeah, really, it's great that you brought it up. So how is that something you think about, like when it comes to your work? Because obviously, I guess as an engineer and producer, you sort of, I guess you have your own sound, but you also have to accommodate for the type of artist you work with, because something you did for some artists might not exactly work for another artist. But is that something you think about, like being true to yourself to some degree?
Yeah, just it's yeah, figuring out the strengths, and in order to being true to yourself, figuring out what it is that you enjoy doing, what you're good at doing, what you get pleasure out of, and what's most beneficial for others. And I know I can, through having tried a lot of worked on a lot of sessions, worked with a lot of people, I know the environments that I prefer and that I sort of thrive in. And I understand that there's a lot of music. For me, often the music isn't necessarily the defining thing. I mean, obviously, I'll hear some band or an artist and be a fan, of course. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll enjoy working on that type of music. So maybe I'll naturally not sort of guide the project where it's meant to go, and then I'm the wrong person for the job, and then it doesn't work, and you end up having a painful couple of months, and then they look elsewhere to get the results that they're looking for that they can't articulate. And there'll be often, yes, and vice versa. I'll hear something that maybe I'm not as much of a fan of, but my natural style or whatever it is that I bring is exactly what they're looking for, and we have a successful project, which is always more fun than an unsuccessful project. So there's plenty of projects that come to mind that are just the happiest of memories, and but musically not something that I would necessarily listen to on a day-to-day basis. That's just that's being true to myself. It's being true to the people that I work with, as opposed to the music. But more often than not, the people that I like are making music that I like as well. So when it comes to it, so that then, if you're being true to yourself, that then often sort of works in your favor as well. So that's the only thing that I really have in my control. Just to sort of being careful with the environments that I put myself in, because it can get intense very quickly, and you can often sort of one day can turn into 3, 4, 5 months very quickly when you're working on something. Just a little trial here and there, see how you get on, and then you're 10 songs in and whatever, see what happens. So
yeah, exactly. But something I'd love to ask you, because obviously being an engineer, you work shitloads of hours. I mean, I don't know your schedule, but just from my experience, having seen other people and stuff like that, it's usually not less than 12 hours a day. I don't know, 5, 6 days a week. It might not be your situation, but I guess you have been in those situations, just because that's the nature of the industry, I guess. So how do you deal with all that part of being an engineer, producer?
I was going to say, just take it as it comes. It's not a consistent gig. There. I mean, you can burn yourself out very easily. You can say yes to absolutely everything and ram your diary with as much as you want of paid and unpaid stuff. Because there's always people wanting to hang out and do, make music. And if you really want to, you can be doing it 24/7. But it's when I was an assistant engineer, it's out of your control. You work other people's hours, and you're there an hour or two beforehand, and you're there an hour or two afterwards as well, and tidying up and just sort of sorting everything out. But when you're young, you've got excitement and adrenaline, and you're keen, you want to learn and just absorb, and it's brilliant. So as long as you're doing whatever's keeping you fulfilled and at peace with what it is that you're after, then it doesn't really matter if working 6 days of 12-hour a day sort of weeks is meaning is making you a peaceful person, and you're very happy with that, then that's fantastic. That's exactly what you should be doing. Whereas if you're doing that and at the end of it you're becoming miserable and a bit resentful of what you do, then yeah, you need to change what's going on. There's no like right or wrong. It's being aware of your situation, and there are people who can. There are loads of people who can just work. That's all they do. Is I often just think like I cannot do that. I can do it in bursts, but I need breaks. Otherwise, I'm not a happy person, and therefore I'm useless to everyone around me. Not just at work, but in my personal life as well. I have to have that balance. I have to have that, step away from it. But when I am working, sort of like long days, they don't feel long. They're the best days. I love them. It's just it's sort of 12, 14, 16-hour studio days of just brilliant. When you're in the zone and the hours fly by, and it's great fun. Do that for like a week, and then next thing you know, you're not doing that, and you're reflecting and just enjoying the other aspects of life, and recharging before the next sort of stint. And that's what I need, and that's how I operate now. Didn't used to be in my 20s, but it is now. So yeah, it's different for everyone, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you there. Actually, that's how I like to work as well, doing it in maybe a week here and there, and then you get to have a break. That's nice. But yeah, then you have the people. But I like that. That's the thing. I don't know if the people who actually do it 6 days, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day really want to do that for that amount of time, because in my experience, they don't seem happy at all. But again, that's just my perspective, obviously. I'm not them.
Everyone is so different. There are some
Yeah.
people genuinely they
Yeah.
they absolutely do. And yeah, but of course every now and then end up in situations where suddenly there's tight deadlines and schedules that are just out of your control, and you need to deliver something, so you pull some late nights, and that's fine. And that there's a bit of a breath at the end of it. And it's different it's different mixing, though. Mixing's a much more structured regime. If I can't work for much more than 8 hours in a mixing day, with long breaks every sort of hour or two. I just get so drained. I come in then. Well, I used to be okay. I used to do it and get worse results I get worse results when I work longer days mixing than I do if I do sort of multiple shorter days, because I just come in the next day, and that first hour that I'm working on day 2, I probably get 40% of my mix is done in that moment. The first day is setting up that sort of 50% mix, then getting everything kind of in roughly the right place, and then that first hour or two of day 2 is when it goes from 50% to 90%, because you just hear it. It's just like it's just fresh, like beautiful, clear, crisp morning, easy to make decisions. You just had a cup of coffee, and it's just like, yes, this is easy. Whereas rewind 12 hours when it was 8 p.m. at night. 8 p.m. It was 8 p.m. and you've done a whole day of sort of finding things, checking things, and it's cloudy, it's heavy, it's hazy, you can't see through it. Yeah, so that in that sense, yeah, that's monitoring that important. But.
Right. You mentioned fulfillment. So, what makes you fulfilled in life?
In life,
Yeah, it could be with music, or it can be just regular old Pete.
yeah. I mean, balance is is a key thing. There's nothing more that I love than having going home after a good day of work. If I'm enjoying that, and then I go home, and I just love seeing my family, and then spend some time with my family, and then I'm ready to work again. It's that balance that brings me sort of that's when I'm kind of at my happiest, when I have that balance, because I love working. I love my job. I'm very lucky that I'm in the position that I am. And yeah, I love my family. I love being sort of living my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant. So having those two things, um, yeah, that brings fulfillment. And then I mean, geez, like everything that comes with that as well. Like friends, family,
Mm.
yeah, hanging out.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's the it's not yeah if 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 any of those aren't quite happening correctly, if there's a bit of an issue in one of those areas, then it definitely affects everything else.
Right.
So having an understanding and just having a balance and sort of don't know what the right word is, but just keeping an eye on all aspects of it. If I work too much, then I'm not, I'm then that affects a lot everything else in my life. So then I'm not fulfilled, even
Mm.
though I might be working on something that I enjoy. Um, I have to balance it out with my life, otherwise it becomes imbalanced. So.
Mm. That's very interesting. So, what is it with work you think that is fulfilling? Is it that it's music, or is it that it's cool projects, or is it a mix maybe?
Um, it's I don't know. There's quite a few things. The discovery of sound, that's like a big thing
Mm.
for me. Things that I've never heard before. It's mad that you can make things that have never been heard before. That simple idea that you're creating something every day that's never existed is insane. Like, that's like you're just magicking up these noises that come out of a pair of speakers or a pair of headphones that you'd have never heard unless you'd have applied yourself to something is pretty cool. And then going into the detail of those sounds are just fascinating. Making a drum kit sound like a drum kit I've never heard before, making a bass sound or a guitar sound or whatever, a vocal sound sort of effects. It's that is a really exciting aspect of music for me. One that brings me a lot of joy and that I like spending a lot of time on. And then there's all the toys that come with that. There's the gear. There's that enable you to make those sounds, whether it's hard synths or plugins or like speakers, different types of just whatever it is. It's that together is an amazing part of making music for me and my my brain and how I'm sort of how like what I enjoy about the studio. Um, However, it doesn't make any sense. I can't without there being a point to it. I can't. I'm not a sound designer or anything like that. I can't make library albums. I don't enjoy making library albums anyway. Sometimes get involved with them, but it's always someone else who's driving it. They've got to read, either I'm mixing a library album or that someone else has written and recorded, or I'm playing guitar on a library album that's, or, something being involved in. But there always has to be a point and a purpose to something for me to be able to really see it, see clearly what it is that we're doing, which is why working with bands and artists is the perfect sort of recipe. I love making sounds. I love making things sound cool out of a pair of speakers in any way. And the point of it is this person or these people, because they want to do it. They want to represent that. They've got something to say, and they in a way that they want to say it. And I'm able to sort of facilitate that more sort of, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, depending on the project. But that to me, that is the fulfilling part of it. Um, yeah,
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's nice to hear.
that's all right. Yes.
Yeah, nice to hear what makes people fulfilled, because I think that's really important to figure out. And yeah, it's awesome that you have figured out what that is for you. I think that's really good.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Mm.
definitely taken a while because you'll throw yourself into so many different circumstances, um, and maybe not understand why something wasn't as enjoyable as something else. And um, uh, yeah, I'm sure my opinion will change of this in the next 6 months or a couple of years, but that's where I'm at right now anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome, man. And maybe I should, before we wrap up, do you have like a favorite failure? Maybe that could be, again, doesn't matter if it's in your work, music, or just everyday life, but it's like a favorite failure that set you up for success later on.
Favorite failure? Oh, I'm not sure. Favorite failure?
So basically, something that was good in the end. It was a failure at first, or maybe you thought it was a failure, but you noticed actually this was good. That those sort of moments.
I guess. I guess. Well, one thing that comes to mind is I was I was turned down for a job um, at Real World Studios
Hmm.
because they wanted to hire um, so I applied for a job at Real World Studios like 12, 13 years ago, and it was between me and another guy. I went down, had like went down for 2 interviews. Peter Gabriel's studio
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
Bath. Went down for 2 interviews, and then got a phone call, and they said, "Oh, we're not hiring you because we're hiring someone else with some more classical experience, um, like orchestral recording,
Mm-hmm.
which I had none of at the time." And then maybe about 2 hours later, I got a another call, and what happened was the person that they had hired was from Abbey Road Studios, and the person that was meant to be taking the Abbey Road job ended up taking another job somewhere else. So Abbey Road were now looking for someone. But a couple of hours later, Real World called me and said, "Look, we're sorry, we've chosen someone else. However, we um, we believe there's a job going at Abbey Road Studios if you want to give them a call." So I gave Abbey Road a call and said, "I hear there's a job going." They said, "How did you know?" And I said, "Well, I applied for the job at Real World, but they hired someone else." So they said, "Yeah, do you want to come in for an interview?" And I think the next day he went in for an interview and then was offered the job there and then. So
Nice.
if I hadn't been turned down for that job, I wouldn't have worked at Abbey Road for.
Hmm.
Uh, so I guess that's probably a bit of success out of failure. But it's a
That's
weird one.
awesome.
I've never thought about that question before. Success from failure.
Right.
Um,
But that's a perfect example, man. And yeah, I guess everyone has those sort of stories. But yeah, again, that's awesome that happened that way.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It was. I mean, yeah, it was a mad, mad sort of situation, and yeah, I'll never forget that 24
No,
hours.
no. Yeah, it must have been mental. I could just imagine being maybe not devastated, but sad that you didn't get that job. 2 interviews, you feel like, oh, yeah, I have a chance. I mean, 50-50 maybe.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
exactly.
I would have felt deflated. I think I would have felt devastated. You know.
Yeah.
How did you feel those 2 hours before the Abbey Road thing happened?
I
Before the
honestly cannot remember.
okay, it's even
Honestly,
more than devastated that it was a blackout.
I can't. Yeah. All I remember being woken up by the phone call because it was.
Wow, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember still being in bed when they called at like 10 o'clock or something. I remember that trying to put on a clear voice. That was good.
Yeah, yeah, man, I'm glad it worked out. And yeah, now you're here, obviously, so it was for the best, I guess.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you never know, do you? You never know
No, exactly,
what might lead one way or what might lead another.
exactly. Well, Pete, it was a pleasure talking to you, and
Nice one, man.
best of luck in Brighton tomorrow. I guess you're going.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
just doing some like just installing some new patch lines and things. Just a bit of a cleanup whilst we got a bit of time. It's been a busy last couple
Awesome,
of
man.
months, so fixing a few
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Awesome.
And
Well,
yeah,
again, Pete, thank you very much.
nice one. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Pete, for coming on to the show. Real pleasure talking to you, and I hope you, the listener, enjoyed it as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and also please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and if you're listening to a podcast or Spotify, please subscribe there as well. Again, your support really matters, really helps getting more guests on and do more cool stuff for you, so your support really helps. And also, please check out the Audio Tribe email list. You get exclusive access before the public. Just enter your name and email address and you have joined. It's completely free, of course. There's a link to that in the description as well. But that's it for this week. Real pleasure having you here and real pleasure talking to Pete. Yeah, thank you. And I'll see you next week again. So take care and see you soon.